CEO RDB Akamanzi, many thanks for finding time to speak to us here on RwandaTV News.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yes. Well, there's much to talk about. Cabinet resolution approving the regulatory guideline on cultivation, processing, and export of high-value therapeutic crop in Rwanda. First of all, why at this time?
Well, first of all, it's true that yesterday the Cabinet of Rwanda approved new guidelines for the cultivation, processing, and export of high-value therapeutic crops. And your question about why now? The reason for that is that we've seen globally there is a very growing and interesting medical research on the use of certain therapeutic crops or the components from those crops that can support development of medicine. And so when we see what's happening globally, many countries are more and more going into approve of medicinal, strictly medicinal cultivation of these crops to support this medical research and hopefully get better and even more useful drugs to fight diseases. What we've seen, for example, is that some of these therapeutic crops can be used to alleviate the impact of vomiting or nausea for people that have cancer or even HIV/AIDS. And so if you can develop medicine that can support that, and it's a growing trend, it's a growing industry, and it's also one that can bring income and revenues to the country, can create jobs. It's very timely, and Rwanda doesn't want to miss on this important, growing, useful industry, not just for revenues, but also for supporting medicine.
But how do we draw a difference between being a therapeutic crop and being an illicit drug?
Well, first of all, medicinal research has protocols around it. It has to be done by people that are licensed to do medicine-related therapeutic crops. So if you're not licensed to do medical research, not anybody is a pharmaceutical company, and not everybody is developing products for pharmaceutical plants. So it's a very highly licensed and regulated industry, because we don't want it to be abused. We don't want it to be used for wrong purposes. We want it to be used strictly for medicinal research. And so it's really about strong regulatory framework, very strong security around how the crops are grown. And maybe I could just talk a little bit about how we're thinking about these regulations in Rwanda.
Please.
Not only are we regulating how you import the materials for planting, whether it's seeds or others, we are regulating how you cultivate these crops. We are regulating the whole process of how you handle post-harvesting, how you ensure quality of the product, the temperature, the storage, the waste disposal. All that is part of the regulatory framework, but also the security. If you get licensed to grow these therapeutic crops in Rwanda, you will be required to have in place a very strong security program that has to be approved by our security organs. And that security program is going to be highly implemented, which means that there will be no way that it can leak outside the farm to go to the domestic market or for wrong users. The crops will be in a very designated place. There will be very strong measures, whether it's CCTV cameras, watchtowers, street lights, security, human security. And so it's going to be extremely secure, and the security is going to be really strong, just to make sure that these crops are not going outside the farm to the local market. That is not going to be possible at all, because we put in place a very strong security so that the products that come from these crops are strictly going to the production of medicine and for pharmaceutical products, and they're going outside the country just for exports.
Still on that, on regulation, so you know who is going to be growing this and at what scale already?
So RDB, together with other government organizations, has been working, especially FDA, has been working with potential investors in this area, because we saw it's a new industry, and as our job within the Rwanda Development Board, we have to keep looking for new opportunities for the country and to keep making Rwanda attractive for business. And in fact, if you look at what we're offering these kinds of investors, it's a very good, secure environment, very attractive business environment, very strong infrastructure. And so we're very competitive for this kind of investments. And so we've been not only following what's happening globally, we've been doing our own research, but we've also been talking to potential investors. And yes, we do have interested investors that we are going to be working with over the next few days, now that we have guidelines in place, to see how Rwanda can contribute to the production of medicinal research and crops in the world.
Potential markets?
Well, US is a big market. European Union is another market. I think those are probably the two biggest markets that we're seeing buying products, and Canada, of course, North America, US and Canada, and also European Union. So we're going to be looking very closely at whether we can participate in these markets. But again, very important to say, we're contributing to medicinal research and absolutely not going to allow any other use, recreation, or any use outside medicinal research. Absolutely not.
So we should not expect any drug abuse cases increasing? No,
we're not going to. Once we give licenses to this use of medicinal high-value crops, it's absolutely not going to be used for anything else, and it's not going to be used outside the designated and licensed area, because there's going to be very high security, as I say.
But if you could tell us more on terms of revenues and all that, what are expectations? What from the government?
First of all, the most important benefit that the government of Rwanda sees in participating in this kind of medicinal research is the impact on human lives. If this research and these crops are done to what we see the world is driving towards, it will contribute to reducing the impact of cancer and other diseases that are relying on these kinds of medicine. So the first important benefit that we see as a country is our contribution to the health and medicinal or pharmaceutical research in the world. But the second one, there are also economic benefits for us. If you look at the kind of revenues that we expect to get from some of these crops that might be licensed to be grown in Rwanda, some of these crops have a value of, you can get up to $10 million from 1 hectare of production. I mean, if you compare that to roses, flowers, for example, if you grow flowers on a hectare, you expect to make $300,000. And this, you can go up to $10 million. It's a huge difference. So economically, it's potentially good for the country. And also, of course, jobs. We expect this industry to create hundreds and thousands of jobs as well if it goes well. And of course, we also expect taxes and hopefully other types of levies for money to come back to the treasury. So I see those as the main benefits: the health benefit, the economic benefit, and the employment benefit.
Any designated place to grow this crop?
We're looking at some places in the country that can be designated because we want to make sure that it's very highly licensed and highly secure. Not anyone can grow it anywhere. And if anyone tries to grow it without being licensed, of course, the law will catch up with them. And so we have very specific places that we will be working with investors to designate this kind of strictly medicinal and research for pharmaceutical industry.
You can't reveal the places?
No, we're still working on those places. I've been seeing people ask about why are we only exporting it and why are we not...
exactly, for local use, locally.
For today, the decision that we've made is that everything that will be produced for medicinal research will be exported and not utilized in the country, because we still don't have the capacity for pharmaceutical development and research that can use these kind of crops today. And so until we develop the industry in Rwanda and there's pharmaceutical capacity to do this kind of medicine development, we will have to export. But who knows, in the future, those kinds of industries might come in the country and that might be able to use these kind of crops in the country. But for today, we don't have that capacity, and that's why we're starting with just exports.
What else should we know about this regulation?
What else should you know about this regulation? I think maybe something important to say is that the regulation is also going to clarify the process of how you get a license. Mostly you apply for it from FDA. RDB will deal with investors who are interested, but the licensing authority is going to be FDA. And you have to apply for a license to import planting materials and a permit for every consignment. You have to get a license to process and a license to export. And every time you want to export, you have to get a permit for every consignment. So that's the licensing structure that is there. But again, this is something that RDB, the government of Rwanda, FDA, we want to contribute to this growing global trend. And we're very excited to see how we can contribute to it.
Akamanzi, CEO of RDB, many thanks for your time indeed.
Welcome.
I appreciate it.